I never thought a simple correction during my Tuesday evening workout would upend my entire life. When Mateo's strong hand rested on my lower back to adjust my posture on the bench press, a wave of warmth spread through me that had nothing to do with the weights I was lifting, and in that instant, everything I believed about myself began to unravel. The gym in downtown Los Angeles was my sanctuary, a place where I, Zachary Thompson, could escape the pressures of my high-stakes marketing job at a tech startup. At 28, I had it all on paper: a sleek apartment in Silver Lake, a girlfriend named Sarah who'd been with me for 2 years, and a family back in Ohio who bragged about their successful son who was on the right path to marriage and kids. But lately, the routine felt hollow. Sarah's kisses felt routine, and the family calls about grandkids made my stomach twist in ways I couldn't explain. Mateo Ruiz had started as the new lead trainer a month ago. He was the kind of guy who turned heads without trying, tall, with olive skin, dark wavy hair, and eyes that seemed to see right through you. His American accent was pure California, laid back and confident. Unlike the other trainers who barked orders, Mateo had this calm presence that made you want to listen. "Hey, Zachary, mind if I spot you?" he'd asked that first time, and I'd nodded, not thinking much of it. That Tuesday, as I struggled with the bar, he stepped in. "Let me show you," he said, his voice low and steady. His hand on my back was professional, but the touch lingered just a second longer than necessary. Or maybe it was my imagination. There, better alignment. Feel that. I did feel it. A spark that made my pulse quicken and my face heat up. I mumbled thanks and finished the set, avoiding his eyes. After, in the locker room, we chatted about nothing: the Lakers game, traffic on the 405. He mentioned growing up in San Diego, moving to LA for better opportunities. I told him about my job, the endless meetings. He laughed at my stories, and for the first time in months, I felt truly seen. As I left, he clapped my shoulder. "See you Thursday, man. Keep it up." I drove home replaying that touch, telling myself it was nothing. Sarah was waiting with dinner, and I kissed her hello, but the spark was missing. The next few days, I found myself looking forward to gym time more than usual. I adjusted my schedule to match when Mateo was on shift. We'd talk more about books, music. He loved indie rock, same as me. One evening, he invited me for a post-workout smoothie at the juice bar next door. "No big deal, just to chat form tips," he said with a grin. I agreed, ignoring the flutter in my chest. At the juice bar, conversation flowed easily. He shared how he'd come out to his family years ago, how it was hard but worth it. I froze for a second, but played it cool. "That's cool, man. Good for you." Inside, my mind raced. Was this why I felt this way? No, I was straight. I'd had girlfriends since high school. This was just admiration for a good trainer. But that night, lying next to Sarah, I couldn't sleep. The image of Mateo's smile kept flashing. I pushed it away, focusing on work deadlines. Yet, the psychological pull was there, a quiet conflict building in my mind. Was I imagining things? Was this normal for guys? By the end of the week, our friendship solidified. He helped me with a tough lift, and I helped him with marketing ideas for the gym's social media. "You're a natural, Zachary," he said. The compliment warmed me more than it should. Sarah noticed I was distracted at dinner, asking if work was stressing me out. I lied and said yes, but the real stress was the growing questions I couldn't voice. Every time I saw Mateo across the gym floor, that initial touch echoed, forcing me to wonder if the life I had built was truly mine or just what everyone expected. The misunderstanding started small. I assumed he was straight because of how easily he joked with female clients, but something in his eyes when he looked at me suggested otherwise. I shook it off and headed to the showers, the water doing little to wash away the confusion that was just beginning to take root. Thursday came faster than I wanted, and when Mateo waved me over for our usual session, I felt my heart skip in a way that scared me. We laughed about a bad movie we'd both seen, but underneath the easy banter, I sensed the shift. He corrected my squat form again, his hand steady on my hip this time, and the same electric feeling surged. I stepped away quickly, muttering an excuse about needing water. He didn't push, just smiled that knowing smile. Back at my apartment, Sarah talked about our future vacation to Hawaii, and I nodded along, but my mind kept drifting to the gym, to Mateo, to the man who had accidentally cracked open a door I never knew existed. The pressure from my parents' weekend call didn't help. Mom asking when we'd set a wedding date. Dad reminding me a man needs a family to be complete. I hung up feeling trapped, the weight of their traditional expectations pressing harder than any barbell. That weekend, alone in the apartment while Sarah visited friends, I scrolled through old photos of past relationships, searching for the same spark I'd felt with one simple touch. Nothing came close. The realization terrified me, but I couldn't stop thinking about Thursday's session and what might happen next. By Monday, I was back at the gym earlier than usual, hoping to run into him before the crowds. When Mateo walked in, clipboard in hand, he greeted me like an old friend. "Ready to crush it today?" he asked. I nodded, but inside I was already questioning everything. The action at the gym had started it all, and now there was no turning back from the path it set me on. Our workouts became the highlight of my week, each session pulling me deeper into conversations that felt more personal than any I'd had with Sarah in months. Mateo opened up about his younger brother who struggled with acceptance in their tight-knit family, and I found myself sharing bits of my Ohio upbringing. The football games, the church picnics, the unspoken rule that boys grew up to marry girls and carry on the name. He listened without judgment, his dark eyes steady, and for the first time I felt someone understood the invisible weight I carried without me having to spell it out. One rainy Thursday, after a brutal leg day, we grabbed coffee instead of smoothies. The shop was quiet, steam fogging the windows, and Mateo asked the question I'd been dreading. "You ever feel like you're living someone else's script?" I laughed it off at first, but his serious expression made me pause. I admitted the pressure from my family, how Sarah was perfect on paper, but something always felt missing. He nodded slowly. "I get that. Took me years to stop performing for everyone else." His honesty hit hard. That night, I canceled plans with Sarah, claiming a headache, and sat alone replaying every word. The misunderstanding grew when I saw him laughing with a female client the next day, their easy chemistry making me wonder if my feelings were one-sided and ridiculous. Jealousy twisted in my gut, jealousy I had no right to feel. By the following week, our friendship crossed into outside the gym territory. He invited me to a low-key indie concert downtown, saying a friend bailed, and he hated going alone. I told Sarah it was a work networking thing and met him at the venue. The music pulsed around us, bodies swaying, and when Mateo leaned in to shout a comment about the band over the noise, his shoulder brushed mine. That same spark returned, stronger this time. We grabbed tacos after, sitting on a curb under string lights, talking until the city quieted. He told me about a past relationship that ended because his partner couldn't handle the stares in public. I wanted to ask more, but fear clamped my mouth shut. Instead, I shared how my best friend from college had drifted away after I got serious with Sarah, calling me settled down, like it was a prison sentence. The psychological conflict intensified at home. Sarah planned a dinner with my visiting parents, and the conversation revolved around engagement rings and house hunting. I smiled through it, but my mind kept flashing to Mateo's laugh, his steady hand guiding me through lifts, the way he saw me without the mask. After they left, Sarah hugged me and whispered she couldn't wait for our future. Guilt crashed over me like a wave. I wasn't the man she thought I was, and admitting that even to myself felt like betrayal. The next gym session brought a turning point I didn't see coming. Mateo spotted me on deadlifts, and when I racked the bar, he said casually, "You seem distracted lately. Everything okay at home?" His concern was genuine, and before I could stop myself, I muttered, "Just figuring some stuff out." He didn't press, but the look he gave me lingered. Later in the locker room, as we changed, he mentioned a hiking trail he loved up in the hills. "We should go sometime. Clear your head." I agreed before thinking, the decision feeling both reckless and inevitable. That weekend hike became the first crack in my carefully built wall. We drove up in his Jeep, windows down, music blasting. On the trail, surrounded by chaparral and ocean views, the conversation turned deeper. He shared how coming out had cost him a job once, but gained him real friends. I confessed the confusion the gym touch had started, how it made me question every relationship I'd ever had. He stopped walking, turned to me, and said softly, "It's okay to not have all the answers right away, Zachary." The wind carried his words, and for the first time I didn't run from them. But back in the city, reality hit. Sarah texted asking where I was, and I lied again. The rifts in my friendships and family expectations were widening, and Mateo's presence was the catalyst forcing me to see them clearly. The secret I was hiding from everyone, including myself, was growing heavier with every step I took toward him. Weeks blurred into a pattern of gym sessions, late-night texts, and stolen moments that felt more real than anything else in my life. Mateo became my confidant in ways Sarah never could, listening as I unpacked the pressure of being the golden son who was supposed to follow the script. One evening after a particularly tough set, he suggested we grab dinner at a small Mexican place he knew. Over enchiladas and cold beers, he opened up about his own family struggles, his father's initial rejection and eventual slow acceptance. I found myself telling him things I'd never voiced aloud, how I'd dated girls to fit in, how I'd ignored the quiet longing that surfaced in locker rooms or movies with male leads. He didn't flinch or offer pity. He just nodded and said, "You're braver than you think for even admitting that." The misunderstanding peaked when I accidentally saw Mateo having lunch with a guy I didn't recognize. They were laughing, heads close, and my stomach dropped. I convinced myself he was taken, that my growing feelings were foolish and one-sided. That night, I picked a fight with Sarah over nothing, then apologized profusely, hating myself for using her as a shield. The next gym day, Mateo noticed my mood and pulled me aside after the session. "You okay? You seemed off yesterday." I lied about work stress, but he saw through it. "If you ever want to talk, I'm here." No judgment. His offer hung between us like an open door. Family weekend arrived like a storm. My parents flew in for a surprise visit, and the four of us, me, Sarah, Mom, Dad, spent Saturday at the beach. Dad clapped my back and talked about how proud he was of my stable life. Mom pulled Sarah aside to discuss wedding venues. Every word felt like chains tightening. That evening, alone in my room, I texted Mateo a vague, rough day. He replied instantly, "Want company? I can bring takeout." I almost said yes, then deleted it. The betrayal of my own secrecy weighed heavy. Monday at the gym, Mateo was waiting with a new playlist he'd made for my workouts, all the bands we'd bonded over. The gesture hit deep. During cool down, he suggested a drive up the coast that weekend. "Just friends blowing off steam," he added quickly. I said yes before logic caught up. The hike had changed something. This felt like the next step I couldn't avoid. The drive was perfect. Windows down, sun on our faces, Mateo singing off-key to old songs. We stopped at a cliff overlook, the Pacific stretching endless below. Sitting on the hood of the Jeep, he turned to me and said, "I like spending time with you, Zachary. More than I probably should." My heart hammered. I wanted to respond, to tell him the touch at the gym had woken me up, but fear clamped down. Instead, I mumbled something about traffic and changed the subject. The ride home was quieter, tension thick. Back in LA, Sarah sensed the distance. "You've been different lately," she said one night over wine. I brushed it off as burnout, but inside the conflict raged. My friendship with Mateo was deepening into something undeniable, yet the traditional life I was supposed to want pulled harder. A text from my college buddy Jake arrived out of nowhere. "Heard you're hitting the gym hard with some new guy." Everything cool. The implication stung. Had someone seen us? The secret was slipping, and the misunderstanding about Mateo's lunch companion still gnawed at me. The big turning point came midweek. After a late session, Mateo asked if I wanted to come over to his apartment to watch a documentary on identity and sports. I went, telling Sarah it was a client meeting. His place was warm, books everywhere, indie vinyl spinning. Halfway through the film, he paused it. "That gym touch the first day, I felt it too. Didn't know if you did." The room spun. I stared at him, the truth crashing down. But before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Sarah calling, worried because I was late. I silenced it, but the moment fractured. We sat in silence, the air charged, and I realized the path ahead would demand choices I wasn't sure I could make. The psychological storm was building to a breaking point, and Mateo's quiet honesty had just lit the fuse. The confession hung in Mateo's living room like smoke after a fire. I didn't run, but I didn't lean in either. Instead, I stood up, mumbled something about needing air, and left before either of us could say more. Driving home, my hands shook on the wheel. Sarah was waiting, concern etched on her face. I kissed her quickly and went straight to bed, but sleep wouldn't come. Mateo's words replayed endlessly. He'd felt the spark too. The gym touch wasn't one-sided. It had started something neither of us planned. The next few days were torture. I skipped the gym, burying myself in work deadlines and forcing smiles for Sarah. But the absence only made the pull stronger. Mateo texted once. No pressure. Just know I'm here. I didn't reply. The misunderstanding I'd built around his lunch with that guy dissolved when I finally asked a mutual gym acquaintance and learned it was his cousin visiting from San Diego. Relief mixed with fresh guilt. I'd let fear color everything. My best friend Jake called out of the blue, voice tight. Dude, people at the gym are talking. You and that trainer spending a lot of time together. Sarah, no? The betrayal hit like a punch. Someone had noticed, and now my carefully hidden world was cracking open. I denied everything, but Jake's silence said he didn't believe me. Hanging up, I realized the secret was no longer mine alone. The big turning point arrived on a Friday night I won't forget. Sarah had planned a romantic dinner, but I canceled last minute, claiming a migraine. Instead, I drove to Mateo's apartment unannounced. He opened the door in sweats, surprised but not unhappy. Come in. We sat on his couch, the same documentary still paused on screen. This time I didn't run. That touch at the gym changed everything. I said, voice cracking. I think I'm falling for you, Mateo, and it terrifies me. He reached over, took my hand. No correction, no workout excuse, and simply held it. The moment was quiet, electric, and real. We talked for hours about fears, family, the future. He shared how he'd waited, hoping I'd find my way. I cried for the first time in years, the release washing away years of denial. But reality crashed back Sunday when my parents called for their weekly check-in. Mom asked about Sarah. Dad joked about making him a grandfather soon. I hung up feeling physically ill. The sacrifice loomed. Continuing the lie meant losing myself. Telling the truth meant risking everything they valued. That afternoon I met Mateo at a quiet park. We walked the paths, his shoulder occasionally brushing mine, and I told him about the family pressure, the Jake call. He listened, then said, You don't have to choose today, but you can't keep hiding forever. I'll wait as long as you need. His words were the anchor I needed. The misunderstanding with Sarah reached its peak that evening. She found an old text from Mateo on my phone. Innocent enough, but the frequency raised flags. Who is this guy you're always talking to? She demanded. I froze, then lied again about a work colleague. Her hurt expression cut deeper than any argument. The psychological toll was mounting. Every decision now carried consequences I could feel in my chest. By midweek, the tension broke in an unexpected way. Jake showed up at my apartment uninvited, demanding answers. If you're gay, just say it, man. Don't drag Sarah through this. The word gay landed like a hammer. I didn't confirm, but I didn't deny either. He left angry. The friendship I'd counted on for years now fractured. Alone, I called Mateo. I need you. He came over immediately. No questions, just presence. We sat on my balcony overlooking the city lights, his arm around my shoulders, and for the first time I didn't pull away. The action that started at the gym had led here, to a crossroads where hiding was no longer possible. The big turning point had arrived, and my life would never be the same. The weeks after Jake's confrontation blurred into a haze of careful lies and stolen moments with Mateo. We met at hidden coffee shops, took drives up the coast where no one knew us, and talked late into the night on his couch. Each conversation peeled back another layer. My fear of losing my family, his past heartbreaks, the shared dream of a life without masks. But the pressure built like a storm. Sarah grew distant, sensing the emotional wall I'd built. Work suffered as I zoned out in meetings, replaying Mateo's steady voice saying, You deserve to be happy as you are. The secret finally cracked open on a rainy Thursday. My mother called in tears. Jake had reached out to her, concerned about me. Zachary, is something wrong? He mentioned this trainer friend and said you seemed confused. The betrayal from my oldest friend burned. I stammered through the call, promising everything was fine, but Mom's worry lingered. That night Mateo came over after I texted him in panic. We sat in the dark living room while rain drummed the windows. I can't keep doing this, I whispered. He pulled me close, his hand on my back, the same steady touch from the gym months ago. Then don't. I'm right here. The embrace was simple, comforting, and in that moment I made the decision that changed everything. The next morning I called Sarah to meet at our favorite cafe. The conversation was the hardest I'd ever had. I told her the truth, not about Mateo specifically, but that I had been questioning my identity for months and couldn't pretend anymore. Her tears came fast. I thought we had a future. The guilt was crushing, but the relief of honesty was stronger. She left saying she needed space, and I sat alone at the table, the weight of the sacrifice settling heavy. My relationship of 2 years was over, and the family fallout was just beginning. Mateo met me afterward at the gym, our original sanctuary. We didn't work out. We just sat in his office while he listened. "You did the brave thing," he said. But bravery came with consequences. Dad called that evening, voice cold. "Your mother is devastated. Jake told us everything. Is this some phase?" I tried to explain, but the line went dead. The rejection stung deeper than expected. That weekend I drove to Mateo's apartment and stayed over for the first time, sleeping on his couch while he made coffee in the morning. The quiet domesticity felt right, but the external storm raged. The climax built when my parents demanded I fly home for a family talk. I agreed, but Mateo insisted on driving me to the airport. At the gate, he hugged me tightly. "Whatever happens, you have me." The flight was torture, every mile carrying me toward the confrontation I dreaded. In Ohio, the house felt smaller, the expectations thicker. Dinner was silent until Dad spoke. "We raised you right. This isn't you." Mom cried, asking what she'd done wrong. I defended myself, explaining the journey from that first gym touch to now, how Mateo had helped me see my truth. They listened but didn't accept. The argument escalated until I walked out, booking a red-eye back to LA the same night. Landing at LAX, Mateo was waiting at baggage claim. Seeing his face, the sacrifice felt worth it. We drove straight to his place, and for the first time I stayed the night in his arms, not as friends, but as something more. The emotional high was tempered by the knowledge that family ties were strained, possibly broken. Yet the growth was undeniable. I'd faced the truth, made the hard choice, and emerged stronger. The misunderstanding with Jake lingered as a scar, but Mateo's loyalty never wavered. The high point of the story had passed, leaving me forever changed. The months that followed tested every part of me, but they also built something solid and real. Mateo and I navigated the new relationship carefully, quiet dinners at his apartment, weekend hikes where we could hold hands without fear, and long talks about the future. Work became my anchor. I threw myself into projects, earning a promotion that felt earned rather than performed. Sarah eventually reached out with a civil message wishing me well, the closure I needed. Jake never apologized, but the loss taught me which friendships were worth keeping. My parents' silence stretched for weeks, then a tentative call from Mom arrived. "We miss you. Come home for Thanksgiving if you want." No mention of Mateo, but it was a crack in the wall. I accepted, bringing him along despite the risk. The visit was awkward at first, Dad stiff, Mom overly polite, but by the second day Mateo won them over with stories and genuine interest in their lives. No grand acceptance speech happened, but the tension eased. Small steps, yet they meant everything. Back in LA, life settled into a rhythm that felt authentic. We volunteered at an LGBT youth center together, Mateo sharing his story while I listened and learned. The action that started with one touch at the gym had rippled outward, strengthening me in ways I never imagined. Friendships reformed with new people who accepted us fully. The psychological scars from the betrayal and sacrifice faded, replaced by quiet confidence. One evening at the same gym where it all began, Mateo spotted me on the bench press again. His hand rested on my back exactly as it had that first day. This time I smiled up at him without fear. "Still feels the same," I said. He grinned. "Better, because now it's real." We finished the workout and walked out together into the California evening, the city lights glowing like possibility. The journey wasn't perfect. Family expectations still lingered in holiday calls. Old friends sometimes drifted, but the acceptance I found in myself and in Mateo outweighed every challenge. I'd grown from the confused man who denied his feelings into someone who chose love and truth every day. The story that began with a shocking touch ended with a life I finally recognized as my own. True or false? Hiding who you are to meet society's expectations is ever worth the cost of losing yourself?